Hello everybody. Today I would like to welcome you to our second video in the pre-algebra playlist. In the previous video, we went over absolute values and the concept of integers. Today we will build upon that concept and we will go over how to add integers. For many of you who already know how to add, I would recommend sticking to the end of the video where we do a lot of examples and we move away from single digit adding of integers into more than 2 digits and 3 digits and when we even go into the 4 digit world. So let's get started. Right now, before I begin, I would like to introduce you to the concept of additive inverses. Now, all this fancy word really means is that when you add opposites together, you get 0. So let me just write this down over here. So here it is. Now, as I said before, additive inverses basically is the addition of opposites. So what I mean by that is if you perform the operation of the additive inverses, you will always get 0. So basically, it's something like saying if I have $5 and I give away $5, mathematically I can represent that as, so I end up with a grand total of $0. Another way of thinking about it is if a football team is on the field and they're on the offense, if a quarterback throws a beautiful pass and it only gains them about 15 yards, they're up by 15 yards in that play. Okay, but what happens is that in the next play, the quarterback gets sacked. While the quarterback was being sacked, he had to move back 15 yards away from the snap of the ball. So he loses 15 yards. So when he loses 15 yards, we represent that with the negative. And so basically, in those two plays, the total gain of yardage by the football team was 0 yards. Okay? So now I would like to go over the concept of adding integers. So one of the best ways I learned about addition when I was in first grade or so was by the concept of circles. So I'll just write this down over here. And what happens in this concept or this idea of addition through circles is that I pick a color. Okay, so one color that I'll pick is red. So red will symbolize -1. Okay, on the other hand, I'll pick another color. In this case, I'll pick blue to represent +1. Okay, so what I mean by this is that if I'm adding something such as, I don't know, 5 and -3 together, what I would do is that I would draw 5 little blue circles and then I would draw 3 little red circles. Okay, and I would use the method of cancellation to come up with my answer. So here's how I would do it. Here I have my problem, and that problem is 5 plus -3. And I'm trying to find out what the value of this question mark over here is. And so what I do is that I draw 3 red circles, and at the same time, I draw 5 blue circles. Now the next thing that I do is I cross out one red circle with one blue circle, because in the beginning of the video we went over the concept of additive inverses, in which we learned that basically if I add 1 and -1 together, I'll get a 0. So basically, one red circle and one blue circle will produce the answer of 0. So that is 0 right there. That is also 0 right there. And this is 0 right here. And what I'm left with are 2 blue circles. And 2 blue circles, of which each represents +1, will give me an answer of 2. Let's do one more example. In this example, we will find the answer of what negative 8 plus 5 is. So we can write this down as this. So, as you can see, I'm going to draw 8 red circles to represent negative 8, and then I'm going to draw 5 blue circles to represent positive 5. Now, since I've done all the circling part, I can start canceling out each red circle with each blue circle. So I get 5 cancellations in total, and I am left with 3 red circles in the end. I end up with the answer of negative 3. So now I would like to move on to another method which is somewhat useful in adding integers, especially single-digit integers, but I really do not recommend this method because I find it highly inefficient because it requires a lot of drawing and it is really time-consuming. So on this new page, I would like to go over the method of adding integers through the number line. And so basically what we need to do is, well, draw as many number lines as there are numbers. So let's do an example, okay? So let's say we want to find out what 5 plus negative 6 is. If you choose to do this problem by the method of the number line, you will have to draw 2 number lines. So let's start. In my first number line, I will draw 5 tick marks in the positive direction. And then I will graph the point 5 to represent that I started from 0 and then I ended up on the 5. In the next step, I will have to conceptually visualize what I mean by negative 6. So when I say negative 6, it means that from my ending position, I will have to walk to my left 6 steps. So in order to do that, let's just draw it out. So this will be my first step, this will be my second step, my third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. So as you can see, after 5 steps to my left, I ended up back at 0. But I still had to take one more step to my left into the negative world to get to my answer. And so my answer will be negative 1. In order to graph this answer, I'll have to draw a second number line. So this number line represents where I will write down my answer. So this is how I would add integers if I choose to do so by the number line method. So let's go over 2 rules now that need to be covered when we deal with adding integers, no matter how big or small they are. So here is rule number 1. So what this rule really says is that the answer will have the same sign as the integers. An example of this is this. If I add something like positive 3 and positive 4 together, my answer will be 7. But you also notice that the 7 has a positive sign because both of the integers that I'm adding in my problem have the same sign of positive. Also, if I add something like negative 2 and negative 6 together, my answer will be negative 8. And as you can see, when I have 2 integers with the same sign in the problem, they will end up with the same sign in the answer. Now let's go over the second rule. And this rule deals with adding of integers with different signs. What this rule tells me is that when I add 2 integers with different signs, the answer will have the sign of the bigger absolute value integer. An example of this can be seen if I add something like negative 7 and positive 8. In this scenario, the first thing that we need to do is figure out the absolute values of each of the numbers in the problem. So, the absolute value of negative 7 is 7. On the other hand, the absolute value of 8 is 8. Since 8 is bigger than 7, the answer will have the same sign as the 8 in the problem. And since the sign in front of the 8 is a positive, the answer will have a positive sign. So we know that negative 7 plus 8 will give us positive 1. So far you should be comfortable with adding integers in the single digits. Now, let's move on to the double digits, and then we will move on to the triple digits and even 4 digits. So now let's try adding integers in the double digits. So what I mean by this is 15 plus 21 or something like that. So in order to add integers in the double digits, all you need to know is how to count up to 10. Now let's do an example of that. Say I have something like I said before, 15 plus 21. I will write down 15 and 21 right on top of each other. With this in mind, the normal convention is to write the plus in front of the last set of digits in the addition problem. So I'll write a plus right over here. And then I'll draw a little dash on the bottom to symbolize that everything on top of the dash needs to be added together. Now let's get started. What I do is I start off on my rightmost digits. In this case, my rightmost digits are 1 and 5. And so what I do now is I add them together. And when I add 1 and 5 together, I get 6. So I write down 6 right underneath 1 and 5. Now I move on to my next set. Then my next set of digits are 2 and 1. So when I add 2 and 1 together, I get 3. So I'll write down 3 right below the 2 and the 1. And so this is really my answer. Okay? So let's do another example. Now let's say I have something like 36 and 19 being added together. All of my numbers are right on top of each other. But in this case, if I add 6 and 9 together, I get 15. So if I get 15, do I write down 15 over here? Well, no, that's not how it's done. When you add 2 or more digits right on top of each other, in this case 6 and 9, and you get more than 9 as your answer, so in this case we have 15, what we do is that we take the ones number, the unit place number, in this case the 5, and then we write that underneath the 6 and the 9. The remainder, in this case, which is the 1, which resides in the tens place, gets written right above the 3. And this is what it's called carrying over the number. And so, in the final step, what we do is that we add all the numbers on the tens column together. So we add the 3 together, the 1 that we carried over together with the 3, and then the 1. So 3 plus 1 will give us 4, and then 4 plus 1 will give us 5. So our answer is 55. So now let's see if you're comfortable with 3-digit addition. Let's do an example of 3-digit addition. Let's say I have something like 168 and 289 being added together. So I write it down like this, and I get to work. I start off with my rightmost digits, in this case 9 and the 8, and I add them together. When I add 9 and 8 together, I get 17. Now I realized that the units place in the number 17 is the number 7. So I write down the 7 right below 9 and 8, and I carry over the 1 onto the next set of numbers. Now I add up 8, 1, and 6 together, giving me 15. Again, I write down 15 in this corner over here, and I realize that the units place is the 5, so I write down 5 underneath the 8, the 6, and the 1, and I carry over the 1 onto my next set of digits. And then finally, I add up 2, the 1, and the 1 together to give me 4. And so my answer is 457. Let's do one more example with 3 digits. Let's say I want to add up 389 and 452 together. I write it down like this, and I get to work. The first thing I do is I add the 9 and the 2 together to give me 11. By now, you should be comfortable with the carrying over. So I get 11 like this, and I add up the 8, the 1, and the 5 together to give me 14. Now, I add up the 3, the 1, and the 4 together to give me 8. By now, you should be getting the hang of adding integers, no matter how many digits there are. So let's just do one more example before I leave you in this video with a 4-digit one. Now let's say I'm adding the number 1,329 together with 4,667. Now I get to work by first adding the 7 and the 9 together. When I do that, I get 16. Once I'm done carrying over the 16, I add the 6, the 1, and the 2 together to give me 9. Now I move on to the next set of numbers, which are 6 and 3, and when I add them together, I also get 9. After that, I add my last set of numbers together, 4 and 1, to give me 5. So there is our answer. In this video, we have only done addition with 2 sets of number. Now, we can do something like this over here as well, and the procedure is the same. We add the 6, the 3, and the 9 together to give us 18, and then we add the 2, the 1, the 5, and the 8 together to give us 16, and then we add the 4, the 1, and the 1, and the 7 together to give us 13. So I hope you enjoyed and learned a lot from this video, and I hope you keep on working hard, and I'll see you in the next video.